Rocky!
Okay. I think we're all set up here. All right. Welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com. And we are in June right now, so summer movie season. So, gonna get a lot of bigger films, but also a few smaller films that'll kind of peek in here and there. So we're gonna try to cover a mixture of them as we go into summer. So gonna start off a little bit light here on this Sunday, with just only three reviews. I usually do three, maybe wedge in two or three more, but for today it's just gonna be three. So what do we got on today? So we're gonna be reviewing obviously the big film of this weekend, Masters of the Universe, the newest version based on the He-Man cartoon. We'll also be taking a look at Power Ballad, which is a musical drama by John Carney, who did a fantastic film called Sing Street. It stars Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas in a musical dramedy of sorts. And we'll also be covering Pressure, a World War II drama about the weather, which is a lot more thrilling than it sounds. So, so we're going to be covering, now, a lot of these films are out right now. But as we get further into the summer, we're going to start covering movies a lot earlier. And as we get into award season, plenty of films are going to come out during that time. Much earlier reviews. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies, be sure to be sure that you're subscribed to this channel and like this video so that other people will know about not just like Masters of the Universe, but Power Ballad, because I get a feeling most people probably haven't heard of the film. And be sure to check out the Patreon, where I am currently writing a book on banned movies. I just loaded up the latest entry on Friday, which is on Persepolis. Obviously, because Marjane passed away last week, so I thought it was important to kind of put that in the book as well. It was already in the book, but I figured I'd finish that chapter, and it's on the Patreon right now. All right, so we'll read a little bit of the chat here before we get right into the reviews. Let's see, Miho Vilcon, Concurrent says hello. How you doing? Sergio says, Mark, have you heard Paramount told the Scary Movie 6 filmmakers to cut jokes about Trump's relationship with Epstein? So much for every line will be crossed, right? I mean, it kind of wasn't. I mean, like, okay, like I was thinking about whether or not I should do a review of Scary Movie because we didn't get a screener. But I was thinking about doing it because a lot of people I think have nostalgia for the original Scary Movies, but they forget that Marlon Wayans and the director of this version of Scary Movie, they have been making spoof movies over the last for over a decade. They've been working on stuff like was a Haunted House and a Haunted House 2 and 50 Shades of Black, and they're all god-awful spoofs. They're unfunny. They're not interesting. They don't engage much with the pop culture references that they want to poke fun at. So I expected it to be pretty much the same deal as for this new Scary Movie. And from what I've seen, it apparently is on that same level. And yeah, the fact that that they would back away from like Trump jokes, makes that tracks too well for this. Like, oh, we're gonna cross anybody who says I'm gonna be offensive and cross every line. There's usually a line they don't, and it's pretty much gonna be like Trump. But apparently, I heard that there was like an Epstein joke in the film, but not a clever one. Like the punchline is just, oh look, it's the actual Epstein files, and that's it. Yeah, every line will be. Yeah, that's why when I saw that poster, I was like, every line. No, you're not. We all know what line you're not going to cross. Anybody who says we're gonna cross the line, we're gonna do edgy humor, we know what your limit is. You're not fooling anybody with this. I'm an equal opportunity offender, you know. Have you seen the new images of Brad Burns' ray gun? They look great. I haven't yet. Did they just? Oh man, I'll have to look that up because I've been hearing some interesting stuff about that. I didn't know that they actually had promo. Well, actually They might. I might actually get a press release kit tomorrow that I could look at. Millen says, "Have you seen the Backrooms?" I unfortunately have not. We haven't been getting a lot of A24 screenings, so I've kind of been trying to find a way to see them sometime during the week or sometime during closer to the weekend. So I am gonna try to see Backrooms this week and try to push that into another review stream with Disclosure Day, because we do have that coming up. Either that, or I'll push it further out to a review with Disclosure Day and Toy Story 5, as those are both coming up on the horizon. Sergio says, there were Trump jokes in Scary Movie 6, but not as mean as the cut joke. They also cut a scene where Anna Faris does an impression of Melania. Yeah, that tracks for Paramount. Paramount is in like, ugh, God, man. It is a mess. Between everything going on with 60 Minutes and how they're just carving out their material, how they're just gutting all of their quality material, is ridiculous. So yeah, it doesn't I mean, it doesn't surprise me for a movie like this, because like Marlon Wayans and what's his name, like Michael Titus, I think it's pronounced, the people behind A Haunted House and 50 Shades of Black, they've never been that funny. So the fact that they would capitulate to anything does not surprise me. Mio says, also wanted to ask, I'm in a mood for a sci-fi film, and I was thinking to watch Gattaca. I haven't seen that film. Is that a good pick? Yeah, Gattaca is a good film, but I think it's one of those films where I think the idea and the kind of like how would I say this? It's kind of like how like a Star Trek episode is more interesting for the ideas than more for like the production quality, because there are some dated elements to it, but I think the general idea of genetics within that type of story and how it's manipulated, I think is a really good idea, and I think it's a solid story. So if you like that type of sci-fi, more hard science fiction, I would say Gattaca is a good choice. It depends if that's the type of science fiction you're looking for. I know there's many subgenres, but I would firmly say yes, Gattaca is in like the hard sci-fi area. Let's see, Sergio says, luckily the state of California is suing Paramount over the merger, right? Apparently, because like from what I've heard, like Paramount is already looking to sell off a lot of its properties, but it's like it's such a stupid announcement, because I don't think it was officially announced. I think it was leaked, but it's like it's such a stupid thing that. Why would you say like, oh, we're gonna sell off? Like they plan to sell off both the properties they have from Nickelodeon and the properties that they'll be acquiring through Cartoon Network. But it's like, sell them off to who? Like the merger itself already amounted so much debt. Like Paramount was already in a lot of debt, and the merger itself just added to that debt. So to sell it off, like I mean, if you were to sell it off, it'd be to like pennies, because like Paramount is so far in debt right now that they wouldn't have any room for negotiating. So they would just sell it. They could sell it to anybody for nothing. Like they might think, oh, well, we are worth so much more, we're going to have to negotiate a deal. But if they negotiate a deal, like it's not going to be profitable on the other end where they're going to go through with it. So just a mess all around. So I don't know if the merger will go through, but if it does, it's still going to be bad. Not just for the audience and like CBS, but just Paramount in general. Sergio says, speaking of Anna Faris, I saw Smiley Face for the first time, and while I'm not into stoner humor, the film consistently made me laugh. She has a naturally funny voice/face. She should be in more movies. I agree. Like I actually I kind of like the House Bunny. It's not a great film, but I think yeah, Anna Faris does have she does have a good comedic presence where she worked well for the Scary Movie franchise. That yeah, she needs something better than this. It's how Barry Weiss got so powerful is beyond me. A truly evil person. Well, yeah, she capitulated with billionaires. That's all it is. There's no puzzle to solve here. She is not great at running a network, as we've clearly learned from like the 60-minute leaks, and why people don't want to work with her. It has nothing to do with journalistic integrity and her being a good business person. It's just all a capitulation. It's the same reason why Byron Allen is putting Comics Unleashed on in lieu of Late Night. It has nothing to do with him being good. It's because he's a billionaire and he paid CBS for the slot. So that's the unfortunate part of it. That's the unfortunate part, is that Byron Allen just paid for that slot. And even worse, like, CBS doesn't care if the show could suck ass and it could get literally no viewership, and it wouldn't matter because CBS already got paid. They've already been paid, like, was it something like 33? It was pretty high number. It's like, it's well over like a well over like, I forget, it was like 33 million or 33 billion. But it was a lot of money. It probably not a billion. It's probably like 33 million. But essentially, it's paid programming. It's paid programming from a billionaire to replace Late Night. The worst kind. Mio says, yes, I love hard science fiction. Definitely going to watch Gattaca now after the stream. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, with that being said, we should probably just get to the reviews here. So let's, of course, get to the biggest film of this weekend, that of course being Masters of the Universe. All right, let's get the notes up here, and we'll jump right into it. Let me change the size of the window here so I can see it. There we go. All right, here we go. Let me get some tea here, and we'll start out with a review of Masters of the Universe in 3, 2, 1. So, Masters of the Universe, the new Masters of the Universe, is of course based on the He-Man cartoon. Goodness, sorry. I just realized I had some hair in my mouth there, and I knew it was going to get caught. So one more time with that. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. Hair technical difficulties. All right, here we go. Once more. 3, 2, 1. So Masters of the Universe, the new Masters of the Universe, is of course a movie based on the He-Man cartoon. And I grew up with He-Man. Actually, I think I might be remembering this wrong, but I think He-Man might have been the first cartoon that I've ever watched, or for sure it was the first cartoon I watched where I wanted the toy, where I needed that toy immediately, which made sense. Like, He-Man was always, it was built upon, you know, the whole thing was like built upon this cool toy and then syndicating a cartoon to promote it further. And oh, goodness. Shoot, I just lost my notes. Goodness. Criminy. Hang on. Criminy. That's a swear word. Sorry, I lost my notes for a minute there. I'm just going to get them back here. Real quick, while I'm grabbing the rest of the notes here, because they disappeared from my view for a minute, I'll take this time to note that we do have more video essays coming up. The next, what do we have next year? The next Masculinity in Movies is going to be on John Wick. The next YouTube profile, I think, is going to be on Melanie Mack. And I'm planning some video game-based essays on games based on movies with an Alfred Hitchcock game. So got that to look forward to. All right, coming attractions are over. I got the notes back up. Here we go again. All right, third time's the charm. 3, 2, 1. So Masters of the Universe, the new Masters of the Universe, is based on the He-Man cartoon, which was itself based on a toy by Mattel. So, of course, He-Man was the first cartoon that I remember from childhood, and I think it was for sure the first cartoon where I wanted the toy. And that's very fitting because it was the first cartoon to launch this kind of syndication by toy companies, where they would make a cartoon that was just made to sell toys, pretty much. And He-Man was very much that. And I have to admit, it worked its magic on me as a child. So, but for this latest movie, Masters of the Universe surprisingly packs far more on its plate than just more Mattel merchandise to push. So there's a knowing quality to this film, where it's trying for laughs, because it recognizes the absurdity of the hero without a shirt or pants fighting another muscular villain without a shirt or pants. And there are very suggestive character names like Fisto and Ram Man and Mechaneck. And when I went into this film, I think my one desire for it was just that, okay, you know what? The cartoon, it is stupid. It's ridiculous. And if the movie can just play with it and just kind of embrace that stupidity, similar to how Mortal Kombat 2 did this year, I would be okay with it. And I remember just thinking while I was watching the film, that it was kind of like the Willow Wish from Obsession, like the monkey paw curl. It's like, okay, you wanted it to acknowledge the stupidity, and it did, and it did too much of that. I think that's the biggest criticism that I have of this new Masters of the Universe, which is kind of a shame, because there is a lot more going on in this movie. There's a chance to further explore what's such a hero, to explore one more time with that. There's this chance to explore the hero of He-Man and his framing of masculinity, coupled with the gay subtext that winks much harder than it did in the cartoon. And while there is some fun in a cartoon come to life that can laugh at itself, it tries way too hard for that humor in a manner that makes one wish that this kid's cartoon would just grow up a little, And I say this as somebody who grew up with the cartoon, remembering it fondly as, one of my favorite first cartoons, and the cartoon that made me want to buy a toy. So I knew of He-Man as the all-powerful hero wielding a sword that grants him muscles, strength, and apparently amnesia to the people around him, because apparently he treats He-Man like a secret identity. Well, Prince Adam does. He treats He-Man as a secret identity, even though He-Man he doesn't really have a mask or anything. He doesn't have anything obscuring him. Like, it's very clearly him, but whatever. So this Prince Adam, the one in the movie, played by Nicholas Galitzine, looking blonde and buff, is portrayed more as the underdog who has to prove himself. His youth saw him struggle to live up to his father's expectations as a warrior, and an attack on his kingdom led him to escaping to Earth, where he had to grow up. And instead of learning the ways of the sword on Earth, he adopts the techniques of human resources, even though he really, really wants to learn swords. Like, he misses those days. So it's kind of bizarre, too, because he spends his adult life being obsessed with this sword and trying to get back to Eternia. And his obsession is so consuming that it's surprising nobody jokes about the phallic nature of the dorky association with such collecting. And trust me, this type of film is not above such gags. And there are a lot of gags like that in this type of movie. So eventually Adam returns to Eternia and finds that it's in desperate need of help. So the evil Skeletor, cackling and parading around as a CGI Skullface voiced by Jared Leto, who seems like he's like channeling Tim Curry in the voice, which I think mostly works for this type of movie. So Skeletor has taken over Eternia, and he seeks the legendary Sword of Power to become a god. And he hasn't been able to get it for all these years because it's been lost on Earth, where Adam was trying to find it. And now that Adam's back, well, it's Skeletor's chance to be the big bad guy. So defeating him, defeating this, very cackling villain, like, they don't quite do the nasally, but Jared Leto does try to make the performance a little bit more of his own while still sounding cartoony. But in order to defeat Skeletor, it's going to require a lot of help from his old friends from childhood. And some of them he recognizes by name, like the warrior Duncan, played by Idris Elba, who most people know as Man-at-Arms. He's kind of become a little bit washed up, but even in his kind of drunk failure state, Adam can still recognize him. And he also recognizes Duncan's more accomplished daughter of Tila, played by Camila Mendes. Now, those are the people he mostly knows by name, but the others he's kind of given simplistic names like Ram Man, who just rams into people, and Fisto, who just there's no other way to say it because the movie will just embrace it. He fists people. He punches them really hard, but the film never wastes an opportunity to say that he fists people. Much like how they say that Ram Man just rams his head into people, so he gives them head. And yes, the film is going to make these jokes about these very combative body parts. Now, it'll take more than Adam's HR skills to defeat Skeletor, obviously, but he won't drop that level of empathy once the sword transforms him into a muscular, pantsless hero that can punch heads and rip off arms. So there are just, and I think the biggest problem with this movie is that there are a few too many dollops of dumb in this goofy-looking fantasy picture. You don't need to try too hard for jokes with a talking green tiger, a sorceress who can turn into birds, and such ridiculous monster foes as Beast Man and Trapjaw. I mean, they're ridiculous just looking at them. You don't have to try too hard for those jokes. But rather than letting these absurd elements work their strange magic and earnest, an extra spell of comedic banter is placed on the script just in case you don't get the joke about Fisto's name, because he fists people, get it? So I hope you like that joke, because they make it at least 3 to 4 times in this movie. So director Travis Knight approaches most scenes with an unease about going too long without somebody saying something funny, making a comical comment, or delivering a silly sight gag. And while there are some funny moments here and there, the many swings, they have a lot of misses that just reek of desperation more than like clever ribbing. Because it has this element where it feels like the movie is almost too ashamed to be a He-Man movie. It's like that like a dad who wants to connect with his children and keeps making these obnoxious jokes because just a few of them were kind of clever and they landed, and just keeps like nudging you saying, "Do you get the joke? Do you get it?" It's like, yeah, that I get it. It's Fisto, it's Ram Man, it's Mecha Neck, and his neck looks phallic. Yeah, I get it. You don't have to keep pointing it out every time. The jokes literally write themselves. You don't need to write extra gags on top of this. And as with many remakes of lackluster adaptations, Masters of the Universe is framed as the ideal movie every 1980s kid wanted, rather than the cheap, laughably bad movie they ended up with in 1987. Because I think like it's kind of the same criticism that a lot of people like. A lot of the positive criticism came with the animated Mario movie. Is that a lot of people were like, well, as long as it's not as terrible as the 1993 movie. And it's like, yeah, it's not as terrible. It didn't really make it a good movie, but Masters of the Universe is very much that same deal. It's like, oh, is it going to be as bad as the Dolph Lundgren movie in 1987, where they're not in Eternia the whole time? It's like, no, it is still in Eternia. And if you were a big fan of the He-Man cartoon, this movie kind of grants that wish of like the movie you never got from childhood, because more characters are present and look accurate to the cartoon and toys, and they embrace all the absurdities and the weaponry that you remember. And Eternia, one more time, as for the location of Eternia, it has the look and feel of a pretty cool fantasy land. It has the iconic locations of Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain that are just, they're instantly recognizable. You look at them, it's like, yep, that's Castle Grayskull. And you see like a Snake Mountain with the lava surrounding it, and it looks pretty cool. Like, yeah, that's Snake Mountain. They got those elements right from the cartoon. And there are heaps of action sequences, all driven by 1980s style epic rock music that matches the likes of the more bombastic Flash Gordon movies. So if you were hoping for like a He-Man movie more akin to Flash Gordon, this is very much going to be your film. And with so much of these fan-friendly vibes, it's odd that the film just keeps mocking itself to an absurd degree. And this atmosphere creates an uneven tone in which the film will toy with its many ridiculous characters, but reduce many, like Skeletor's right-hand woman of Evelyn and Adam's mother of Queen Marlena Glenn, to roles that are just so routine, it feels like they're in another movie entirely. And there is potential for so much more here, but the themes become jumbled as they pepper dialogue between scenes of exploding ships and sword and blaster fight scenes. And I think what frustrated me most is the overall themes of the film, which kind of feel a little jumbled and wasted, because Adam's masculinity is called into question throughout, and while he proves himself to be worthy of the power of Grayskull through his empathy, the film rarely makes a strong connection between the two, often just treating Adam's HR skills more like a punchline than a purpose. And I mean, like, the elements were all there. I mean, you have Adam's harsh father of King Randor, played by James Purefoy. He wants his son to be very, very manly, and he kind of looks down on him here and there. And there's, then you have, like, Man-at-Arms, who is very focused on battle, and he isn't in touch with his feelings, and he ends up as a failure, and he just kind of stumbles around as a drunk, and he needs Adam's help to kind of, like, lift himself up from the doldrums of, not being the best warrior and trying to find more to being a man than just fighting all the time. And, like, the original He-Man cartoon, for better or worse, would try to illustrate important themes through the narrative and hammer home these ideas in a, if the story itself wasn't direct enough with its themes, it would often fall back on a public service announcement. And this movie also has a public service announcement, but it never shuts up with its self-mocking humor. It's more content that the audience should just laugh at the recollection of PSAs in general, rather than take anything away from them, like the cartoon did. So any message that it might glean becomes a generic coding of bravery and the power within. And the film can never settle on what it wants to say about masculinity beyond its broad strokes of insecurities and proving yourself through the protection of others. But what is most frustrating about this movie is the gay subtext that keeps rumbling to the surface, but maddeningly it never breaks through. And again, this was a component of the He-Man cartoon, considering it became big with the gay community beyond the fact that it involves a buff hero with no shirt or pants fighting a buff villain with no shirt or pants. And Adam's story becomes even more overtly gay in its progression as the underdog hero struggles to be normal on Earth and assert himself on Eternia, and always feels held back in his true identity when his culture has reshaped him so much that he's not sure where he belongs. Like, he doesn't feel like he belongs on Earth, and he doesn't really feel like he belongs on Eternia. That's some pretty cool stuff to work with. But we can't move on from this framing and progress from the one more time that. But we just can't move on from this framing and progress from gay subtext to, text. And this wasn't an issue with the updated She-Ra cartoon on Netflix, which, one more time with that. This wasn't an issue with the updated She-Ra cartoon on Netflix, which embraced same-sex marriage and the lesbian romance between Adora and Catra. And, like, why can't this He-Man movie take the logical next step? Like, this isn't reaching, considering all the, like, it's not just like, oh, like, I'm reading too much into it. I mean, like, you have the characters like Fisto, the phallic imagery of characters like Mechanic. There's an aborted romance to stress that Adam and Teela they're just friends. They don't really have a romantic connection here. Not to mention, oh my goodness, Skeletor. The way that Skeletor interacts with He-Man. There is an entire sequence which just reads as Skeletor, like, playing on Adam's insecurities and the fear that he might be gay, to the point where it becomes so overt that at one point Skeletor is literally commenting on the sword between He-Man's thighs. It's like, it's so obvious that, and again, I know that the queerness in the He-Man cartoon was subtext. It was always under the surface, but it's like, does it have to still be there? It just kind of feels like we're kind of stuck in this one version of He-Man, whereas like the cartoon of She-Ra was able to move on and do something new and reinvigorate the franchise, where He-Man just kind of feels like it's just falling back on the cartoon and just kind of like laughing at the cartoon here and there without really doing anything all that interesting with it. And like there are some genuinely fun moments here and there that acknowledge the stupidity of the naming conventions and the awkwardness of the hero villain dynamic, but you know, the movie just doesn't know when to embrace its weird fantasy and when to crack a joke at the right time. It just keeps cracking jokes throughout, almost to the point where it feels like it's a shame to be a He-Man movie. And the self-deprecating humor can only go so far. I wished for less acknowledgement of all the toys that I played with and for better development of Adam's struggles with his overt masculinity and subtextual queerness. And sadly, the film just settles for more of its Saturday matinee mindlessness, just teasing its older audience with the film they didn't get when they were kids and the film that they can't have as more mature adults. And I think that's kind of where I am on the film. It's like I think it's, if you're a fan of the cartoon and you felt like you were let down by the 1980s Masters of the Universe movie, this feels like the movie you would have liked to have seen as a child. But now that I'm grown up, I kind of expect a little bit more from my media. So instead of just like going back to, you know, the same old He-Man stuff, I want to see something new. I want to see something more intriguing, more fascinating. And there have been like some He-Man revival cartoons that did this pretty well. Like there was one He-Man cartoon in the early 2000s that actually showcased like the origins of Skeletor. And it had like a much different animation style, and it had a very different action-oriented tone that I think worked really well. But this movie just feels like it's laughing too much at itself. It's trying too hard to be absurd when it really didn't have to be. Like you have this cool fantasy land with all these weird characters. And I think the movie is best enjoyed by following the dialogue of the battle robot Roboto, voiced by Kristen Wiig, who remarks that life is a series of absurdities leading to infinite nothingness. And Masters of the Universe is very much that, with the absurdities of both the silly fantasy and the idea that this Mattel property would outgrow its goofy appeal. The toy company, I mean, like, I'm this one more time. Mattel. The toy company had success in addressing femininity when bringing Barbie to the big screen, but He-Man still feels too insecure to say anything about masculinity and being gay beyond just snickering at the suggestions. So, you know, Barbie actually felt like it was doing something more revolutionary with the toy and the franchise, whereas He-Man, it feels like it's still... It feels like it's not quite ready to embrace like a different version of itself or try to find something new to explore. It feels... This is very much an insecure Masters of the Universe in that it doesn't really want to... This is very much an insecure version. Goodness, I'm running out of breath here. I gotta wrap this up really quick here. So I'll wrap it up really quick here. So yeah, Masters of the Universe, it has some fun moments here and there, and I did snicker here and there at some funny bits, and there was some decent, you know, dorky, campy action here and there, but for the most part, I think the film just feels like it's not, like it's too ashamed to either embrace its weirdness or its queerness, and just like, and it feels like it can't quite extend beyond just laughing at He-Man as a cartoon than doing anything all that new or interesting with the material. So it's okay as an action fantasy film for its general atmosphere, but given its themes, there was a chance to do something more here, and it does feel a bit squandered with its jumbled themes. So yeah, I'm a little bit on the fence with Masters of the Universe, but I was just a tad bit annoyed by the fact that this film couldn't extend beyond just the nostalgia and just mocking itself, you know. So yeah, I was on the fence, but if you had to ask me, no, I wouldn't really recommend Masters of the Universe. So, Masters of the Universe, currently playing in theaters right now. Felt my voice. I wrote the review script a little too long on that. Goodness. So let me just get some tea here, and then I'll read through the chat. Sergio says, I hadn't seen Colbert in years, but not going to lie, I surprisingly got kind of emotional when a show ended with Goodbye, Hello with Paul McCartney. Yeah, it was very emotional. Like, that, it should have never happened. Colbert should still be on the air, cracking ho-hum jokes about Trump that that many people laugh at, and I don't have to watch or care that much about late night. It should still be here, so I cannot watch it, I guess is what I want to say. It's not like I'm going to watch, like, Comics Unleashed anyway, so. Let's see. Sergio says, my only knowledge of anything He-Man related were the countless Robot Chicken sketches I watched as a kid. Never watched any of the shows. And I get the feeling that might be the draw, where it felt like they were trying to make a version that would appeal to the Robot Chicken crowd. Because, like I said, it does have a lot of the elements from the He-Man cartoon, but it's also just keeps laughing at itself to a ridiculous degree. It's like, yeah, I get it. This is silly, but can you try to be earnest? Like, I'm not saying you have to be serious, but you can lay off the jokes. You don't have to try too hard with characters like Beast Man and and Trapjaw and Mechaneck. They're already ridiculous, you know. Let's see. Raptor Man says, I have the power. Oh, I wish this movie had more power. I will say this. I think most families will probably enjoy it. I know the kids in the theater really enjoyed the extended sequence in which He-Man beats the shit out of Skeletor, which was a pretty fun moment. I can acknowledge that. That was a pretty cool scene. Let's see, Raptor98. I was born in 81, grew up with He-Man, had all the action figures, and I loved the film. 9 out of 10. All right, cool. Yeah, like I said, that's something I'm acknowledging. Like, if you were like a big fan, like I said, I was born in 85, so I got into He-Man when it was on the way out. But I still got in just in time to obsess over the cartoon and get the toy. I think that was my first action figure, if I recall. And if you if you wanted more from that 1987 film and it wasn't accurate to the cartoon, yeah, you will love it, which clearly you did. So I'll acknowledge that. I just got annoyed with how much the film kept mocking itself and just toying more with the gay subtext than actually doing anything more with it. Indecisive says, I didn't find the movie too self-deprecating by any means. I think it could have gone much campier, though. It seemed like it wanted to be, but couldn't reach the finish line. I think that's where I think the problem with that is how I think it would require a little bit of seriousness if it wanted to address the queerness of it, which is why I think it was like a calculated move to keep it as subtext, especially when you consider like what is the most like revealing like gay scene in that movie has implications that could associate it with like He-Man denying it for the sake of good, which I think is a really bad look. So it's a little bit frustrating. I mean, like the themes are a little bit of the mess. Like even like not just the gay subtext, but like masculinity in general. Masculinity comes up by name several times in the film, and there are some chances where like you think like, okay, well, you know, Adam has a much different version, and so does Duncan, and the two can learn from each other, and they kind of set that up, but don't really develop it much. It just kind of like it feels like there's an entire section missing there that should have made it work. But I think this is the problem when, you know, like there are 4 screenwriters here, and I suspect likely more, because this story has been floating around since like the early 2020s when Netflix was still considering a He-Man movie. And I don't know how much of that bled through into this script. And it might have just been like a combination of all that. So Brelly Ghost says, "Do you think it will do well on streaming?" Probably. I think, if you're a He-Man fan, I mean, there's a lot of fan-friendly moments there. If you love yourself some fan service and don't mind the fact that this film doesn't really go anywhere all that different from the He-Man cartoon, yeah, it's fine in that regard. I don't have issue with it, but like, I just wanted more from it. It's like, I don't know. I felt like Kevin Garnett in Uncut Gems. You're just like, why the fuck would you show me that if I can't have it? Why were you gonna show me like Skeletor clearly preying on He-Man and like commenting on his dick, and He-Man denying a relationship he has between Teela and feeling insecure about himself in both Eternia and Earth, and not just go for the obvious, and not just be a little bit more open with the queerness? Because and it's not a big ask. Like the She-Ra cartoon did it just fine. I thought it did a fantastic job expanding on that without making it feel crowbarred in. It actually felt like natural development, and it felt like more of its own thing rather than just trying too hard to replicate the She-Ra cartoon. Whereas He-Man, I think, is just falling back on that and doing no more than that, while still teasing you with the better film that it could have been. Because if the film were just like, just mindless action throughout and a few jokes here and there, then I'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. It's okay. But the fact that it had all that potential with addressing masculinity and queerness and then doesn't, it's like, well, what was the point? What was the point of bringing that up? It's like there are kind of elements of that in the cartoon, but there was a chance to do more with it here, and they didn't. And that's the frustrating part. Which I would probably attribute to just the fact that there are way too many writers on this. Let's see. Holly says, I really appreciate how descriptive your reviews are. I can't really watch media at the moment. Oh, thank you. I do try to like write out more of my reviews ahead of time. In fact, if you actually want to read the reviews that I do here, you can find them on my website, movieswithmark.com, obviously. But yeah, I do try to be a lot more thoughtful, mostly on story and themes. I think those are the most important elements to me. Those are, I think, the most fascinating elements that I like to talk about those the most. Like I could obviously talk about the production, like the CGI compositing. Like it was okay given the amount of it here, but the story and themes are mostly what I care about a lot. See, Breligo says, the PSA from Orko was very cute. I was surprised how well designed he was. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't... Well, the thing is, I kind of wasn't surprised by that point in the movie, because you look at everything else, like, they got Skeletor right. They got Trapjaw right. They got Beastman right, which I thought was just going to look like a mess, but it actually turned out pretty well. They got Mechaneck right. They got Fisto right. They got everything else right. So by the time they got to Orko, it's like, yeah, that's Orko. That looks like the same character with this annoying voice who would tell me about the lesson I would learn. So the PSA was cute, but it was also relying on the joke of that you recognize PSAs, because like the joke is that they're teaching you a lesson with a punchline, not something that you would expect from the PSAs, which is part of like my frustration with the film. It's like it is subversive here and there, but the parts where it would matter, where it would be more exciting and be more fun and playful and clever with the material, just didn't quite reach that element for it. It's there, like I can see it. It's in its grasp, and I just couldn't get a grip on it. So sadly. Rodian T says, He-Man cartoon compilations have been popping up in my feed lately, and I'm enjoying the crap out of them. I'm genuinely surprised. Not too surprised. I mean, there's a He-Man movie coming out, obviously, promote more of the He-Man cartoon. Same thing happened with the Ninja Turtles. We got a new Ninja Turtles movie. Not too surprising. It happens, you dig something up and then all the old stuff comes up from the grave, which is probably the best thing that can happen with this material. What do you think of the trailer for Insidious Out of the Further? I have actually not watched it yet, but
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Holy crap.
Hey Mark. Found your page recently and I've been loving your reviews and little movie quizzes. You've helped me start to actually analyze the movies I watch and I am forever grateful. Keep it up, dude.
Thank you so much, the True Halo. Yeah, I'm glad y'all are enjoying the quizzes. Yeah, I don't know why. One day I kind of know why. I was playing You Don't Know Jack movies, which I love, which is a fun game because it really tests how much you know about older movies, because that game came out back in 1996. So it's mostly just like classic cinema trivia. So I try to frame it around that type of style. And yeah, it's been fun trying to come up with those quizzes. And I'm glad that that I've kind of, been a little bit of an influence in analyzing media a lot more. And I mean, none of this would be working as well as it does without all you guys, especially for like super chats like this one. So thank you very much, True Halo. We've got more videos coming soon and plenty more quizzes lined up. I've got at least like 2 weeks of quiz questions already scheduled. So be ready for those when they hit every day. Also, I am taking some advice. Some of you have been saying, you could put this into a book. And I am going to do that. I am going to compile all these questions into a trivia book. But I'm kind of waiting till I get like a beefy amount. Because I think right now I have like a little over 100 right now. And I kind of want to beef that up. Maybe to like 300 or 500, So eventually we'll get there. Rodian T says, I'm surprised that they're still enjoyable. They're fun in the campy way. Like, I still enjoy G.I. Joe for the same reason. The G.I. Joe cartoon, it's cheap. It's got some ridiculous dialogue. It's got lots of animation errors here and there. But the general tone is kind of campy and goofy, and I get genuine laughs from it. Because I remember, the best thing ever was back in 2002, I think. 2002, 2003, when Toonami on the Midnight Run, they would play reruns of G.I. Joe. And I remember that was around the time when, during my summer job, I had just gotten off of work. So I would come home like around the time that, a little past midnight, and just laugh my ass off at G.I. Joe as a teenager. So, and yeah, like He-Man's the same deal. Like, you go back and watch the show, it's pretty cheap in a lot of aspects. And the dialogue is pretty ridiculous, and all the fight scenes are kind of weird and herky-jerky, but there's a charm to it. There's a charm to there's an iconography to the characters. There's some good lessons here and there, and it's dorky, but it's lovable. Yeah, so I get the love for the He-Man cartoon. KJXana says, Movie with Mark, are you aware of the controversy and backlash surrounding the YouTuber Otterly Noah? Yes, I have. And I'm not too connected to it. I mean, I've popped into like Otterly Noah's streams, not as a voice, but just like, commenting here and there, not having done too much. And I have been on one stream with Ant that we did for New Year's, and yeah, not much more than that. But yeah, it's very troubling that he would commit like the cardinal sin of YouTube, which is like false copyright striking. It's like, just, you don't do that. Like, I think there was a joke I was making that I think was made like by Krusty on The Simpsons, where it's just like, like YouTube's not hard, like 1, you don't do death threats, 2, you don't whip it out, and 3, you don't false copyright strike people. It's like, that's obvious. Yeah, very disappointing, especially because like Noah was kind of drawn to promoting me as well, because we had similar interest in talking about autism media representation. And the fact that it became like, something that Noah said he was going to focus on after that, just be kind of like, well, no, like, because there's not accountability there. And you just say, oh, you're going to go back to doing autism representation. It's like, it hurts. It hurts to talk about this material. It's like, now I'm a little fearful to talk about autism representation again. I do want to at some point, but I don't know if I can until like I let this die down a bit, because it's maddening. It is maddening. So I'm hoping to move on from it Will you be reviewing the Backrooms? I will eventually. I haven't got to see it. I will probably see it Tuesday when because cheap tickets on Tuesdays. Cheaper if you're on a rewards program. So I'm gonna try to sneak in on not sneak in. I'm gonna buy a ticket. Obviously, it's $5. So yeah, I'll go see it on Tuesday, and maybe review that with Disclosure Day, and a third film that I'll have to try to find for next week. So yeah, for sure next week I'll get a review out of the Backrooms. Rodian T says those movie quizzes. I can't stop doing them, though I super suck at them. They're hard. That's the point of them. I don't want to make them easy ones. I want to make them like ones where you kind of got to think about. Like the one I did on Sailor Moon, where I said, like, okay, which two Sailor Scouts are in a lesbian relationship, but only based on the planets they represent. So it's like, is it two gas giants, or is it a gas giant and an ice giant, or they're more complicated questions. Which is why the book I'm going to put them in, I'm going to call it Super Movie Trivia. Not regular movie trivia. It's going to be the super kind that you really got to think about. Let's see, Toaster Bone says, yeah, I look forward to it. Yeah, they're fun. Sergio says, it looks like after the failure of him that Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions has been struggling. They've laid off people, lost the bidding war on weapons, and Peele's new film is canceled. Uh-oh. Yeah, I was wondering. Because, yeah, I haven't seen much of, like, Monkey Paw Productions in a while. Toasterbone says, Backrooms.
Great shit! Don't get cocky!
Thank you for subscribing, Jason. Backrooms felt like it should have been a Monkey Paw movie. It felt like it should have, but I think you're starting to see now, like, why smaller directors are being given a shot by, like, smaller... I mean, I say that, but, like, A24 is not a smaller company. But I guess, a closer comparison might be, Iron Lung being more self-produced and self-distributed and becoming a pretty good hit, which is pretty cool to see. I will say this, though. The one thing that annoys me about Iron Lung's success is that a lot of people want to think that, like, that because of Markiplier's success, that Hollywood is trying to drown out him. Like there was a controversy where he wasn't showing up in the box office estimates for Sunday. And Markiplier's like, what's going on? They took my movie off. And everyone's like, oh, this is a Hollywood conspiracy. They're not putting it. It's like, no, the reason that happened is because, when you file box office estimates, that requires working with the studio. That means, like, that the outlet that is covering the box office has to reach out to a studio, get an idea of ticket sales and pre-ticket sales, and then you come back and you make the estimate. And if you don't do that, like if you're a new company and you don't know that you're supposed to reach out if you want to get the estimates in, then that doesn't happen. And that's what ended up happening with Markiplier. And I think that's the problem. Is, like, I do admire him for making a really cool movie all on his own and self-producing it and self-distributing it. But I feel like there's, like, a lot more to it I feel like there's a lot more to the distribution that he's got to learn before he jumps the gun and says, like, this is all it's not a conspiracy. You need to look into this more. You need to file more paperwork behind the scenes to get this done. And it will get done, because I've heard that the box office outlets were reaching out to the company to see if they could get the estimates, and they didn't. So, but yeah, like indie, especially with, like, Backrooms making $100 million on its tiny budget. Yeah, it's a great time for indie horror. Well, not even just indie horror in general. Because I saw that Chris Cargill, the screenwriter of The Black Phone, and what was that one film he did? Sinister. He was saying that, if one horror film does great, that's, it's like the water lifts all boats. I'm screwing up the wording here, but it's essentially, a high tide lifts all boats. In other words, if one horror film does great, all horror films do great, which is great, because Backrooms, the fact that it's, like, the biggest horror film this year, leading a heavy box office, that means a lot of other horror films are going to soar up. And especially on such a smaller budget, it's going to say, hey, what if you threw a little more money at some directors? What if you gave some other younger directors a chance? Maybe they could make some cool horror films. So yeah, great time. Great time for smaller horror films. Let's see. Sergio says, I hope Monkey Paw doesn't go under. They are so innovative and they have the coolest production company logo along with the Atomic Monster logo. They desperately need a hit. I hope they can bounce back. Hopefully Backrooms can keep the momentum going. Keep people more excited for horror. Hopefully they get better productions going. Toasterbone says, it had a weird feel to it, not completely. I mean, it was quasi-amateurish, but I just got that vibe at the moment. Maybe super high concept, not trad horror. Probably, it might be. Raptor Man says, I have the power. Of course you do. Ellen Degen says, I love how Shelby Oaks doesn't get brought up anymore in these conversations. Because it wasn't that good. It wasn't a horrible film, but it was not that good. And you kind of, if you want to, hold up YouTubers, you want to, boast about the good stuff. You want to hold that up. You don't just want to focus on the failures. Because if all you focus on the failures, that's going to be read as a sign that you shouldn't take any YouTuber as being capable of making a competent film, Sergio says Blumhouse wanted to do a Sinister Insidious crossover called In Sinister. I kind of want it to happen. It should happen. RLM mentions that a punchline now. Oh, goodness. Breligo says, Breligo says, I feel so embarrassed for Chris Stuckman ever since his response video to RLM. Yeah, I do too. And I understand where he's coming from. And I don't despise the guy. I just didn't think he made a good movie. If he made another movie, I'd give it a chance. I watch it. I think Stuckman is coming from a genuine place. I think he kind of struggles with the conflict of interest between filmmakers and film critics a little bit in that regard. I get where he's coming from, and I get the idea to see film from a different angle once you've actually worked on a movie and once you've actually seen what goes on behind the scenes. And I have actually been on indie movie productions, so I know a little bit about that world and what it takes to make a film, which is why I'm a little bit easier on indie films, just because those films, they're coming from someplace genuine. They're usually spending their own money, ton of money, and they're taking a huge gamble as opposed to a bigger studio which just writes a check and then off it goes into production. So I have a lot of sympathy. Even if an indie filmmaker fails, I still have some sympathy for them. I don't hate them. Unless they've made a truly hateful film, then I'm not going to despise them just because their movie wasn't that good. Because it takes a lot of work. The fact that any independent filmmaker can just finish a movie, I think is nothing short of a miracle. And the fact that it can be good is pretty much a miracle. It takes a lot of work. So I have very much a lot of sympathies. Sergio says, Talk to Me and Bring Her Back are exceptional. They are, yeah. So Talk to Me was A1? Was it? Oh, wait. No, because... Oh, actually, yeah, it was. Yeah. Let's see, Kajixana says, I'm really excited for the upcoming Cuphead spin-off that was announced. Oh, was that I think... No, that might be something different that I'm thinking of. I won't stumble into that conversation. Breligo says, I should clarify, I don't feel embarrassed in a malicious context. I don't take glee in his movie not making the impact that he was hoping for. Sure, I get it. All right, let me get a little, goodness, I blow through on my tea here. All right, let's talk about another film called Power Ballad, which stars Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas. So let me get the screen over here and get my notes up. And we'll get to some more reviews here. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. So Power Ballad is directed by John Carney, who 10 years ago, he made a film called Sing Street, which was just, I love that movie. It was inspirational, it was heartfelt, and it explored the joys and the heartbreak that come from music when you're young and you just got like a song in your heart, you just want to bring it out. And his latest film, Power Ballad, follows those familiar sensations, but for a different time in life. And because while Sing Street dug deep into the youthful inspirations to start a band and fall in love, Power Ballad delves into the fears of getting older, becoming irrelevant, and losing sight of passion with a desire to recapture that magic. And all of it goes down in a way that doesn't feel like the routine, washed-up musician... One more time with it. Sorry, I was running out of breath there. All of it goes down in a way that doesn't feel like the routine, staging of a washed-up musician, focusing on... One more time with that. All of it goes down in a way that doesn't feel like the routine of the washed-up musician, focusing more on where to go when the place... Screw it. Yeah, I screwed up last part. One more time. All of it goes down in a way that doesn't feel like a routine, just focusing on the washed-up musician, because it's focusing more on where to go instead of just, the places that we can never return to. So the movie is about two generations of musical talents that converge just at right one time there. The movie is about dang it, I'm really screwing up here. One more time. The movie is about two generations of musical talents that converge at just the right time in Ireland. There's Rick Power, who's played by Paul Rudd, who is a singer who has settled for a life in Dublin, reducing himself to a band that plays at weddings rather than concerts. And then there's Danny Wilson, played by Nick Jonas, who is a former boy band member struggling to make his solo career take off. They cross paths at a wedding where they perform together, and they have an immediate connection that forms as they blend their voices with a classic song about the good old days. And their love of not just singing music, but also writing it comes out at their kind of little private after party where they just kind of sit around, they drink, they write, and they start just jamming all night long, and they start revealing a lot of their fears and their passions and what makes them love music, and what are the importance of the lyrics they want to convey and what it says about their life. And just there's just like such a spark of creativity and friendship between them. And there's no There is no scrutiny from audiences that want to hear the same songs or producers who demand something better. No, it's just two dudes connecting over to guitars and pianos in a rather charming and intimate session. And their fateful meeting takes a... But their one more time there. But their fateful meeting... But their fateful meeting takes a dark turn as Rick reveals too much of himself with his personal song called How to Write a Song Without You. And in Danny's desperation to maintain his lavish lifestyle, he gives Rick, he basically gives Rick's song, one more time that. In Danny's desperation to maintain his lavish lifestyle, he gives Rick's song a shot, and it turns out to be the perfect love song. And taking the form of a hit single, Rick feels betrayed by his most heartfelt song being stolen from him. And it's all the more heartbreaking that he can't find any recording of it, of his work in progress, and his family and bandmates can't recall the lyrics because it's so heartbreaking. Like, nobody believes Rick, and it's enough to just drive him mad, threatening to, it just threatens all of its, we're done with that. Nobody believes Rick, and it's enough to drive him mad, threatening to, one more time. Nobody believes Rick, and it's enough to drive him mad, threatening his enduring romance with his wife, fuck, one more time. Nobody believes Rick, and it's enough to drive him mad, threatening his enduring romance with his wife Rachel and his daughter Aja, who has a patient acceptance of him, and his faithfulness to his simple pal of Sandy, played by Peter McDonald. So a story like this could easily go astray by centering on Rick's frustrations with his personal song being ripped from his heart, and thankfully it doesn't, because in a quiet moment, Rick gives his dismissive daughter a listen to his latest project, and she confesses that songs about falling in love are more appealing to old people than to her generation. And when Rick asks what the new generation of teens like to hear about in their music, she gives the amusing answer of revenge. And indeed, this could very much turn into a story of revenge, especially when Rick decides to track down Danny in Los Angeles. And this quest, however, turns out to be less about revenge and more about the need to be honest, with a greater emphasis on addressing the phony nature of fame on a more internal level. So Paul Rudd fits like a glove into the story, where he can effortlessly be funny without trying too hard for laughs, but also comes off like a musician who loves his craft. And this is crucial, considering how inauthentic he could come off against Nick Jonas with his boy band background. And their musical scenes together are engrossing and they're sweet as they try to figure out what they want to express, sharing their fears and passions. And those moments work so well that there's genuine heartbreak when the betrayal comes and a friendship is just shattered. And Rick's real friends and his family become a greater source of strength, even with his regrets about never achieving his dreams of playing at Madison Square Garden. All of this manages to be heartfelt and hilarious without, relying on the goofy antics that could befall a picture that features a car crash, a fist fight, and a tumbling off the roof. So, we're gonna get into the end here. Yes. So yeah, Power Ballad finds more of the rousing spirit and music beyond the vibrant one more time with that. One more time. So Power Ballad finds more of the rousing spirit and music beyond the vibrant voices, the cool guitars, and a longing for rock and roll. Carney's staging of music might be debatable for staging the #1 love song in the world, but there's no denying the heaps of humanity he places behind the notes and lyrics. It would be impressive enough for It would be impressive enough to frame Rudd and Jonas as equal musicians, but finding the joy and soul of that art in the process makes this film so much more cozier than I expected it to be. It's just a wonderful film for the way it doesn't embrace the obnoxious divide between generations in music, but still has some honesty about the passage of time. As when Rick's band struggles to figure out boy bands, with Rick admitting, are we stoned or just old? And he just kind of casually states that in a way that makes it very, very natural. It's a very natural performance from Paul Rudd. And as for Nick Jonas, he's a very insecure member of a boy band who's struggling to find his voice. And I think a lot of that, it comes from a more genuine place with him, that I wasn't too surprised that he gave a pretty good performance. So, going back to Paul Rudd's statement, are we stoned or just old? We can be old and stoned, but still make connections over music that comes more from the heart than from a label. So yeah, Power Ballad, it's not as great as Sing Street, but I hold that film in such a high regard. But I think, for focusing on kind of what seems like the twilight years of musicians, I think it did a pretty good job finding the sweetness in there, especially with the way that the way that Rick connects with Sandy is very, very charming. And there's a few moments where they break down in tears, and especially the initial jam session between Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas is very it's fun to just hang out with those two dudes. So I think for that focus, I think on male friendships, the film just knocks that aspect out of the park while still presenting some charming notes of music here, and finding that genuine inspiration about wanting to sing rock and roll, even if you don't end up being a success that plays at Madison Square Garden. You can still be yourself, and you can still express yourself in a very meaningful way. So yeah, that's what made me love the hell out of Power Ballad. So Power Ballad is playing, it opened last weekend, but it's expanding into theaters this weekend. So if you can find it, go seek it out. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Good. We got one more movie to go, which is good because I'm losing my voice here. All right. We'll cover one more movie from last week, which is Pressure. All right. So if you're ready for a historical drama with Brendan Fraser. Okay, let me get the notes up here and the window in the right spot there. There we go. All right. And here we go with Pressure. In 3, 2, 1. So Pressure is a historical drama about D-Day, and specifically the weather on D-Day. So one of the most important lines in this movie is that we must face facts, no matter how frightening they may be. And one could add to that line in this movie that we must face facts no matter the lack of frills, given how straightforward this movie becomes. So adapted from a stage play, which isn't too surprising the more that the movie goes along, this film never loses focus on the weather on D-Day and debating the best time to deploy troops amid a storm. That restricted nature keeps this film... One more time with that. Got a little hair there. Right now. That restricted nature keeps this film on track to make the drama more grounded than theatrical, despite the urge to flip over the desks when the many heated arguments take place. Now, although the film is built on urgency, there's a powerful sense of control in how Adam Scott steps into the role of Captain Stagg. Now, as a leading meteorologist, he's called upon to figure out the D-Day forecast with a deadline in hours more than days. And this task is impossible to complete without some doubt and uncertainty. But Stagg doesn't turn down the challenge. Countering his claims on a storm on the way is the hotshot meteorologist of Irving Crick, played by Chris Messina. And he's very keen on name dropping the celebrities of the many clients that he's worked with. Even more aggressive than Crick's refusal to budge on the sunny weather that should be on D-Day, there's the fuming fury of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, played with towering stature and a blaring voice from Brendan Fraser. So if Scott's performance was a nuanced display, if Andrew Scott's performance was a nuanced display of concentrated... One more time with that. If Scott's performance was a nuanced display of concentrated intelligence, Fraser is a hurricane of acting that explodes into every room, especially when Stagg corrects Eisenhower on the... he corrects him on the definition... God, one more time with all that because I screwed up. If Scott's performance was a nuanced display of concentrated intelligence, Fraser is a hurricane of acting that explodes into every room, especially when Stagg corrects Eisenhower on the definition of a hurricane. Now, there are some areas where the film thankfully expands to make a theatrical movie adaptation worth the leap right off the stage, because there are scenes of dead bodies that follow the exercised tiger that are portrayed... Goodness, sorry. Getting towards the end of the stream here. It says, now, there are areas where the film thankfully expands to make a theatrical movie adaptation worth the leap off the stage. Scenes of the dead bodies that followed Exercise Tiger are portrayed washing up on shore in waves of red. The storm that rolls in has a powerful effect as Stagg takes comfort in his predictions being correct. There are a handful of shots that stress the violence of D-Day, so that the climax involves more than just, men and women crowding around radios, listening closely to whether or listening closely to whether or not listening closely to whether or not Normandy was successfully taken. One more time with that, I garble a little. One more time with that. There are a handful of shots that stress the violence of D-Day, so that the climax involves more than men and women crowding around radios, listening closely to whether or not Normandy was successfully taken. But even with these grand displays, the story never veers off track to get lost in the spectacle of weather or the grit of war. Even the addition of Stag's pregnant wife is only given enough room to make his motivations more personal, fearing that he'll lose her in the next bombing. The clash between meteorologists and the military is a compelling battle as science struggles to make its case amid those more focused on deployment. There are so many moments where you want to see Stag just lose his calm and grab Eisenhower by his uniform and just spit in his face with all the importance of weather and try to, if only to illustrate how precipitation works. But Stag instead displays an admirable patience in trying to explain more through thoughtful words about the importance of science. Because trying to keep that bridge sturdy is Eisenhower's secretary of Kay Summersby, played by Carrie Condon, who is doing her best to ensure that Stag will be in better communication with the important general. She knows that Eisenhower is more terrified in private, and that Stag isn't just a cold machine that can never generate a 100% chance of rain, and she does her best to ensure that these two men recognize their shortcomings so that they can make the right call. And as with many films centering around a profession, there's a tactile quality to this picture, loaded with montages of weather balloons ascending, calls being made, and charts being analyzed. And even though those scenes are expected, the energy of these "let's get to work" scenes they really do hold a lot of appeal in the motivation. So Stag and his men are not just assembling a forecast, but building a bridge between their scientific know-how and the crucial military decisions that could cost lives. And it's thrilling to watch Stag and Eisenhower attempt to see eye to eye without reducing the scientist to a snide expert and the general to a blustering blowhard. Even someone as brash as Crick isn't portrayed as a cartoonishly evil opposition, as Stag genuinely believes that this dude does want to get the right data and forecast, where even after Crick is disgraced, Stag is I still need your help because you still know a bit about what you're doing, and I need you to analyze this data, and I need you to be a team player, which I really admired about Stag. And maybe it's just the fatigue of the current Trump administration opposing science at a hideous level of ignorance, but witnessing men in positions of power trying to do the right thing and translate their expertise to one another. It felt inspiring, even knowing how this all plays out on D-Day. And armed with an astute mind and a beating heart, Pressure is an exciting tale of weather and war without much fluff, presented at a relatively brisk pace of 100 minutes. There's rarely a moment that feels like it's dragging its heels, even when going through the expected procedures and emotional hallmarks of a historical drama. The performances are engrossing for the variety of personalities, with Scott's stern approach pairing nicely with Fraser's barking of uncertainty. The stress of the situation comes through well in a movie that is 90% meetings with the military and debates over charts. It might not stray far from its laser focus on the path of clouds, but it works well enough to not get lost within them. The movie gets the job done with its message rung loud and clear, to the point that one audience member that I was at the screening just called out at the credits, "And that's why you trust science." And we all kind of chuckled, but they're kind of right, because there was a there was a knowing chuckle throughout the theater of this recognition that these subjects might not always make for the best movies, but they do serve a greater purpose. And thankfully, Pressure was one of the better movies on such a topic. So yeah, I thought Pressure was a pretty damn good movie for what could have just been a very boring movie of charting the weather for D-Day. So Pressure might be in a few theaters, but it came out last weekend, so you might have to track it down. But if not, be sure to check it out on VOD, because it's got some pretty good performances in it. And if you like those like very tactile films where it's a bunch of people, they're all focused on a goal, and they're just they're spending these extra hours trying to get the right data and trying to figure something out. Just I guess if you really like weather and math, this is going to be your type of movie. And I do admire the fact that they don't try to gussy it up with too much melodrama or thrills. And you really do feel like the for lack of a better term, the pressure mounting in this movie. So Sergio says, did you ever get Paramount Plus? And if so, did you cancel it after their MAGA shift? I'm kind of waiting for after some stuff I'm kind of waiting for the rest of like the shows that I like on there to blow over. Just because I still like Star Trek, and I want to at least see like the end of what's that Starfleet Academy. I want to see how that ends, because I genuinely enjoyed Starfleet Academy, and I want to see how it ends. But after that, probably not, because all like the Taylor Sheridan shit that keeps getting shoveled on there. Not to mention that a lot of the more recent Paramount movies that get pushed on there, like Scream 7, all that, haven't really been that good. So I'll probably cancel it after I finish up with Starfleet Academy. Because I don't know if they're going to do anything with Star Trek after that for a good long while. So Sergio says, unfortunately, when I think of films named Pressure, I think of the segment from ABCs of Death that involved high heels and a kitten. Oh, God. I thought I'd forgotten ABCs of Death, but then you had to remind me. No animals were harmed, but man, what a horrendous. Obviously, no animals were harmed. They were going all cannibal holocaust. No. But yeah, ABCs of Death is kind of tough to get through. A lot of those segments are really uncomfortable. And I thought I would really like that anthology, because that came out around the same time as like VHS, and that was like when I think VHS was still struggling to find like the first VHS film I thought was okay, but it's definitely not the best. Like they definitely needed a sequel. But in the meantime, I thought, okay, though there's this ABCs of Death, and cramming in 26 shorts, and not it's about like half of them are good, the other half not so good. T-Serger says, Paramount said after the WB merger they want to produce 45 films a year. Good luck with it. I mean, they could produce 45 films a year, not good ones. If they're like, they might just shove a lot onto Paramount Plus, which I think there might be like a handful, but I don't think they do any exclusive movies on Paramount Plus anymore. But if they mean like pushing into theaters, that ain't gonna happen. That for sure ain't gonna happen. Because like you gotta, well, for one, if you want them to be successful, you got to plan them out. So if you got a big film that you want to develop, you've got to have a date set. And sometimes even if you don't have the movie finished or decided, you still got to set that date like a year in advance. So I don't know how they're going to be able to do that. Was that the MO of ABCs of Death? Did they just tell the directors to be upsetting and as mean-spirited as possible? I think they just told them to do whatever, and they didn't listen. It's like, oh, do you think this is too much? It's like, no, do whatever you want. And then just like threw out whatever came out. I think the problem is they probably granted too much leniency to the directors. Like, at least with like the VHS films, there's a control there. Like the more recent VHS films they've all had a theme. Like, oh, this is set during 1999, or this is set this is going to be cosmic, or this is set during Halloween, or this is all going to be, you know, framed in 1998 or something like that. So there is some amount of control there. ABCs of Death just feels like, take a letter, do something, here it comes. Yeah, I think it was just like a lack of oversight that made so many of them screw up. Okay. I think that's all of the films that I got for today. Oh, hang on here. I think, did I have, oh no, I didn't. Okay. So, quick recap of the movies we reviewed on today's stream. We reviewed Masters of the Universe, a film that has some fun and pokes fun at the He-Man cartoon, but it pokes a little bit too much fun, and it just kind of feels like it falls back on that the gay subtext of the cartoon. It feels like it can't quite evolve past that and would rather just snicker at the absurdities rather than embrace them or do something new with the material. So, a frustrating, if not at times fun, adaptation of an old 1980s franchise. I reviewed Power Ballad, about Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas being two generations of musicians connecting with each other and experiencing the heartbreak that comes with their music and trying to find that passion. It's from John Carney, the director of Sing Street, who made a fantastic film. This isn't as great, but it's still a pretty damn good film. That's only because I love the hell out of Sing Street. So Power Ballad is a great dramedy that focuses on music. And I reviewed Pressure, which focuses on the weather for D-Day and the clash between science and military. It's based on a stage play, which you can tell easily with a tactile focus on trying to do some good in the world. And it's got some great performances by Andrew Scott and Brendan Fraser. So, of all three of these films, I think probably the one I loved the best was Power Ballad, which is playing in theaters right now. But if you just want some mindless summer action because it's summer, Masters of the Universe isn't too bad. I kind of see it on the same level as The Mandalorian and Grogu, where there's nothing all that deep here, and it does kind of jumble its themes here and there. But if you just like some pretty good action with some charm here and there, it's not bad. It's an okay summer film. So you got your choices there. And if you'd like to read the reviews of the movies that we reviewed on today's stream, you can check out movieswithmark.com. You will find all of the reviews up there. So coming up next week, we are going to have reviews of Disclosure Day, a new sci-fi film from Steven Spielberg. Looking forward to that. I'll also review The Backrooms, since a lot of people have been talking about it. And a third mysterious film that I haven't quite decided yet. I was initially going to push the stream back to next week to cover Toy Story 5 as well, but I think I might get to this a little bit early here. So if you enjoyed the stream, if you like to tell other people to check out smaller films like Power Ballad, because I think it'll get lost in the shuffle, be sure to like this video so more people know about it. And if you're not already, be subscribed to stay up to date on the latest movies. In addition to, if you're watching this during the stream, subscribing or super chats activates these random movie quotes that I've strewn throughout the alerts, which I can't recall. I've set up at least like 40 of them and randomized them, so I have no clue what they will do. And at the request, I have taken off the Homer scream because I know y'all don't like the Homer scream. It scared everybody, so don't worry. He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore. But thank you so much for the $10 super chat there from the True Halo. I'm glad that you've been enjoying the movie quizzes and more in-depth coverage of movies, which is what I've been all about here. So also be sure to check out the Patreon, where I am updating my writing on banned movies that's coming out for a book. And you can also get early access to some of the videos that I'm working on and video essays. I didn't do it with the quartering one this week just because that one took way too long, and I just wanted to get that one out there. But for sure, with Masculinity in Movies, we will be getting patrons will be getting an early access to that, as well as YouTube YouTube members here on the channel. I don't often acknowledge that, but the YouTube members do get the same early access video perks as patrons. And I don't forget that, though. I make sure that I do that first and then get to Patreon as well. So it's one after the other. So, yeah, that's all we've got today. Be sure to tune in next time for reviews of Disclosure Day and The Back Room. So until next time, have a good one, everybody. Enjoy your summer.